The champagne cork popped with a satisfying thud against the glass ceiling of the 42nd floor conference room. Sarah Mitchell watched the bubbles rise in her flute, still hardly believing the words that had just been spoken. $50 million. Her artificial intelligence startup, Neural Link Solutions, had just secured the largest Series B funding round in Boston tech history. "Congratulations, Sarah," said Victoria Chen, the lead partner from Apex Ventures. "Your facial recognition technology is going to revolutionize airport security worldwide." Sarah smiled, but her mind was already racing ahead to implementation timelines and scaling challenges. At 29, she had built something that mattered, something that would make the world safer, something that proved every person who had ever doubted her wrong, especially Derek. Her assistant knocked on the glass door. "Sarah, sorry to interrupt, but this came by courier, marked urgent." The cream-colored envelope felt expensive between her fingers. "Westfield Academy Class of 2015 Reunion Committee." Her stomach dropped. She had been Sarah Walsh back then, married to Derek Walsh, the golden boy destined for legal greatness. She had been nobody special, just the small-town girl who had somehow caught the attention of the most ambitious guy in school. "Everything okay?" Victoria asked, noticing Sarah's expression. "Just high school reunion stuff. You know how it is." But Victoria did not know how it was. Victoria had not dropped out of MIT after 2 years because her husband convinced her she was not smart enough for computer science. Victoria had not spent 3 years typing legal briefs and organizing networking dinners while her own dreams gathered dust. Victoria had not been told repeatedly that her ideas were cute but impractical, that she should focus on supporting real ambition instead of chasing fantasies. The reunion invitation felt like a ghost reaching out from her past. Part of her wanted to throw it away and pretend Westfield Academy had never existed. But another part, the part that had just closed a $50 million deal, wanted to walk into that reunion and show everyone exactly who Sarah Mitchell had become. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jake, her husband of 2 years. "Saw the news alert. 50 million. I am so proud of you. Dinner at Astra to celebrate?" Jake Harrison understood ambition because he lived it. As the founder and CEO of Quantum Dynamics, one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country, he recognized the fire that burned inside entrepreneurs. More importantly, he had never once suggested that her fire should burn smaller, so his could burn brighter. Sarah walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. The city sprawled below her, full of possibility and promise. She had come so far from the scared 22-year-old who had believed Derek when he said she was reaching too high. Now she owned a piece of this city's skyline, employed 67 people, and held patents that would shape the future of artificial intelligence. So why did her hands shake slightly as she opened the reunion invitation? The RSVP deadline was in 2 weeks. She could simply ignore it. Derek would be there, of course. He had probably already RSVP'd yes, ready to hold court and remind everyone of his rise to prominence as a corporate lawyer at one of Boston's most prestigious firms. He would have stories about high-profile cases and celebrity clients. He would charm everyone with the same smile that had once made her believe she was lucky to be chosen by him. But Sarah was not that girl anymore. She had built something Derek could never tear down because she had built it herself, with her own hands and her own mind. Maybe it was time to face the ghosts of Westfield Academy. Maybe it was time to show Derek Walsh that the girl he had convinced to abandon her dreams had not only survived his destruction, but had risen higher than he ever could. She pulled out her phone and typed a response to Jake. "Dinner sounds perfect, but first I need to tell you about my high school reunion." 2 days later, Sarah was reviewing code in her corner office when Emma Rodriguez burst through the door without knocking. Her best friend since college carried a laptop and wore the expression of someone who had discovered something terrible. "We need to talk," Emma said, kicking the door shut behind her. "And you are not going to like what I found." As an investigative journalist for the Boston Globe, Emma had developed an instinct for uncovering secrets that people preferred to keep buried. She set her laptop on Sarah's desk and turned the screen toward her. "Remember how you said Derek posted something on the reunion Facebook page? I decided to do some digging." The Westfield Academy Class of 2015 Facebook group filled the screen. Derek's post sat at the top, seemingly innocent. "Cannot wait to see how everyone turned out. Some people really change, for better or worse." It had 37 likes and 12 comments, all variations of "so excited to see everyone," and "it has been too long." "Okay, so he is being his usual passive-aggressive self," Sarah said. "What is the big deal?" Emma scrolled down. "The big deal is what he has been posting in other groups. Alumni groups from MIT, professional networks, tech industry forums. Look at this." She clicked on a screenshot. Derek had posted in a group called Boston Tech Entrepreneurs. "Interesting how some people get ahead in this industry. Hard work versus strategic marriages. Just saying there are different paths to success." Sarah's blood turned cold. "He did not mention me by name. He did not have to. Look at the responses." The comment thread was a disaster. Someone had posted a link to an article about Sarah's funding round. Another person had commented, "Heard she was married to some billionaire. Convenient timing." A third had added, "Whatever happened to earning your success the old-fashioned way?" Emma scrolled to show more posts, each one more damaging than the last. Derek had been careful, never directly accusing Sarah of anything, but creating a narrative that painted her as someone who had abandoned integrity for wealth. He had seeded doubts about her competence, her character, and her right to success. "How long has this been going on?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. 3 weeks, right after the initial funding announcement. Sarah felt the walls of her office closing in. 3 weeks of poison spreading through her professional network. 3 weeks of carefully planted doubts about her credibility. She thought about the slightly strange looks she had gotten from potential partners lately, the questions about her background that seemed more probing than usual. "Sarah, there is more," Emma said gently. "I tracked down some of your former MIT classmates. Derek reached out to several of them last month. He has been asking questions about why you dropped out, whether you seemed serious about computer science, whether you had what it takes for the tech industry." The carefully constructed confidence Sarah had built over 5 years began to crumble. Derek was not just trying to embarrass her at a high school reunion. He was systematically undermining her professional reputation, weaponizing their shared history to destroy her credibility in the industry she had fought so hard to enter. Her phone rang. Victoria Chen from Apex Ventures. "Sarah, I hope you do not mind me calling directly. I have been getting some unusual questions about your background. Nothing specific, just investors asking about your experience and qualifications. I told them your track record speaks for itself, but I thought you should know." Sarah managed to keep her voice steady. "Thank you for the heads up, Victoria. I appreciate it." After hanging up, she stared at Emma's laptop screen. Derek's posts stared back at her, each one a calculated strike designed to make people question everything she had accomplished. He was not just attacking her past, he was threatening her future. "What are you going to do?" Emma asked. Sarah stood up and walked to her window. The city stretched out below her, the same city where Derek Walsh practiced law and attended high-powered networking events. The same city where her reputation was being slowly, methodically destroyed by a man who had already taken 3 years of her life. "I am going to that reunion," she said finally, "and I am going to remind Derek Walsh exactly who he is dealing with." But even as she said the words, doubt gnawed at her. Derek had always been smarter than her at playing social games. He understood how to manipulate perception, how to plant seeds of doubt that would grow in people's minds long after the conversation ended. She was good at building technology, but Derek was good at destroying people. This time, though, she would not face him alone. This time she had allies, resources, and most importantly, the truth about who she really was. At least, she hoped that would be enough. Jake Harrison set down his coffee cup and studied his wife across their kitchen island. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Beacon Hill penthouse, illuminating the concern etched across Sarah's features. She had been picking at her breakfast while scrolling through her tablet, checking and rechecking the damage Derek's campaign was causing. "Show me," Jake said simply. Sarah slid the tablet across the marble surface. Jake read through Derek's posts with the analytical focus that had made him one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs under 40. His expression remained neutral, but Sarah knew him well enough to recognize the slight tightening around his eyes that signaled anger. "This is sophisticated," he said finally. "He is not making direct accusations, so you cannot pursue defamation. He is creating doubt through association and innuendo. It is actually quite brilliant in a sociopathic way." That is not making me feel better. Jake looked up from the tablet. Sarah, in the 5 years since your divorce, has Derek ever tried to contact you directly? No. Complete radio silence until now. So why is he starting this campaign now, right after your biggest funding round? Sarah considered the question. Derek had always been competitive, but this felt different, more personal, more urgent. I think, she said slowly, it is because for the first time, I have achieved something he cannot dismiss or diminish. When I started Neuralink Solutions, he could have told himself it was a cute hobby that would fail. When we got our Series A funding, he could have convinced himself it was luck. But $50 million from Apex Ventures is not luck. It is validation that I am everything he told me I was not. Jake nodded. He is not trying to destroy your business, Sarah. He is trying to destroy your confidence. If he can make you doubt yourself, make you feel like an imposter, then he wins even if your company succeeds. The observation hit home because it was true. The posts themselves were damaging, but the real poison was psychological. Every time Sarah walked into a meeting now, she wondered if the people across the table had seen Derek's insinuations. Every time someone asked about her background, she wondered if they were testing her credibility. There is something else, Sarah said. Emma found out that Derek has been reaching out to people from MIT, asking questions about why I dropped out. But here is the thing, Jake. I never told him the real reason I left. Jake raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Sarah took a deep breath. She had never shared this story with anyone, not even Emma. Derek did not convince me to drop out of MIT. I was failing organic chemistry, which was a prerequisite for the bioengineering track I wanted. I was too proud to tell him I was struggling, so I let him believe it was his idea when I switched to business school at Suffolk. It was easier than admitting I was not as smart as I pretended to be. Sarah, Jake said gently, you have 17 patents in artificial intelligence and machine learning. You built a company that 43 venture capital firms wanted to fund. You are one of the smartest people I know. Anony, but what if Derek is right? What if I only succeeded because I married you? What if people see our relationship and assume I took shortcuts? Jake stood up and walked around the island. He took Sarah's hands in his, forcing her to look at him. Listen to me very carefully, he said. You had already raised $12 million in Series A funding before we ever met. You had already filed for 14 patents. You had already built a team of 60 engineers who respect and follow you. I fell in love with you not because you needed rescuing, but because you were already remarkable. Sarah felt tears threatening. Then why am I so scared? Because Derek is using your own insecurities against you. He knows exactly which buttons to push because he helped install them. But Sarah, those insecurities are not facts. They are weapons he gave you to hurt yourself. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Saw the reunion invitation online. Looking forward to catching up after all these years. Hope you are ready for some surprises. Derek. She showed the message to Jake, whose expression darkened. He is escalating, Jake said. This is not just about social media anymore. Sarah stared at the message. Derek was not content to wage war from a distance. He wanted a face-to-face confrontation with their former classmates as witnesses. He wanted to finish what he had started 5 years ago, when he had convinced her she was not good enough for the life she wanted. But this time would be different. This time, she had something Derek had never given her. Someone who believed in her unconditionally. Someone who saw her strength instead of her weaknesses. Someone who understood that love meant building each other up, not tearing each other down. I am going to that reunion, Sarah said, her voice stronger than she felt. And I am going to show Derek Walsh that he picked the wrong person to mess with. Jake smiled, and for the first time in days, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Derek might have started this war, but she was no longer the scared 22-year-old who had let him define her worth. She was Sarah Mitchell, CEO and founder, patent holder and innovator. It was time to remind Derek exactly who he was dealing with. The Westfield Academy Gymnasium had been transformed for the reunion, with draped fabric and string lights attempting to mask the industrial ceiling and basketball hoops. Sarah stood at the entrance, smoothing down her black cocktail dress and fighting the urge to turn around and drive back to Boston. She had arrived alone. Jake was attending a board meeting for one of his portfolio companies and would join her later in the evening. Part of her was grateful for the time to face her demons without backup, but another part desperately wanted his steady presence beside her. Sarah Walsh! Oh my God, is that really you? Madison Cooper, former head cheerleader and current real estate agent, descended upon Sarah with the kind of aggressive enthusiasm that had made high school social navigation so treacherous. Actually, it is Sarah Mitchell now, Sarah corrected gently. Right, right. I heard you got divorced. So sorry about that. Derek seemed like such a catch back then. But look at you now. You look amazing. I heard you married some tech billionaire? That must be nice. The comment landed exactly as Derek had probably hoped it would. Madison's tone carried just enough skepticism to plant seeds of doubt about Sarah's worthiness, wrapped in enough false sympathy to maintain plausible deniability. Jake and I are very happy, Sarah said simply. I bet you are. Hey, you should come say hi to everyone. Derek is holding court by the bar, telling stories about his big cases. He was just mentioning you, actually. Sarah's blood chilled, but she forced a smile. All good things, I hope. Madison's expression shifted slightly, revealing a hint of the mean girl she had been 20 years earlier. Oh, you know Derek. He is always so diplomatic about personal matters. Sarah made her way through the crowd, recognizing faces from her past, but feeling like an alien visiting a foreign planet. These people had known her as Derek's wife, the quiet girl who had faded into the background at social events. They had no context for who she had become. She spotted Derek immediately. He was surrounded by a group of former classmates, gesticulating with a whiskey glass while telling what appeared to be a highly entertaining story. He looked exactly the same, still handsome in that prep school way, still commanding attention effortlessly. Their eyes met across the room. Derek's smile widened, and he raised his glass in a mock toast before turning back to his audience. Sarah felt like she was 16 again, invisible and insignificant. Sarah! There you are. Emma appeared at her elbow, carrying 2 glasses of wine. As Sarah's +1 for the evening, she had volunteered to do reconnaissance while Sarah was parking. What is the damage? Sarah asked, accepting the wine gratefully. Well, Derek has been the star of the show so far. Lots of stories about high-profile cases and celebrity clients. He mentioned that he is representing some tech entrepreneur in a patent dispute, though he was very discreet about the details. Sarah frowned. Patent dispute? Yeah, something about stolen intellectual property and corporate espionage. Why does that ring a bell? Before Sarah could answer, Derek's voice boomed across the room. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for just a moment. The chatter died down as all eyes turned toward Derek, who had somehow acquired a microphone. Sarah's heart began to race. I just want to say how wonderful it is to see everyone again after all these years. It is amazing how much we have all changed and grown. Some of us have stayed true to our original paths, while others have, shall we say, taken more creative routes to success. His gaze found Sarah in the crowd, and his smile turned predatory. I see some familiar faces out there, including my ex-wife Sarah. Sarah Walsh, everyone. She is Sarah Mitchell now, married to one of Boston's most successful entrepreneurs. Quite a upgrade from a small-town lawyer like me, right, Sarah? Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Sarah felt every eye in the room turn toward her, and the familiar feeling of being trapped and exposed washed over her. But you know, Derek continued, success comes in many forms. Some of us believe in earning our way through hard work and dedication. Others find more, shall we say, efficient paths. To each their own, right? The implication was clear to everyone in the room. Derek was painting Sarah as someone who had married for money, abandoned her principles for convenience. He was doing it with a smile and a joke, making it impossible for her to object without seeming defensive. Sarah felt the walls closing in. This was exactly what Derek did best, using social dynamics and public pressure to make her feel small and worthless. Every person in this room would leave tonight thinking of her as a gold digger who had traded her integrity for wealth. She thought about her 17 patents, her 67 employees, her $50 million funding round. None of that mattered here. In this room, she was still Derek's ex-wife, the girl who had not been good enough to keep him interested. Actually, Sarah said, surprised by the strength in her own voice, I think there might be some confusion about my story. The room fell silent. Derek's smile faltered slightly. I am the founder and CEO of Neuralink Solutions, an artificial intelligence company that just closed a $50 million Series B funding round. We have developed facial recognition technology that will be deployed in airports nationwide to enhance security. I have 17 patents in machine learning and artificial intelligence. She paused, looking directly at Derek. So while I am certainly grateful for my husband's support, my success is not actually dependent on my marriage. It is dependent on my work. A murmur ran through the crowd. This was not the narrative Derek had been building. Sarah felt a moment of triumph, but it was short-lived. Derek recovered quickly, his smile returning full force. Of course, Sarah has always been ambitious. Though I have to say, the tech industry is so complex these days. It must be helpful to have connections and resources that can open doors that might otherwise remain closed. Right, Sarah? He had pivoted smoothly, acknowledging her success while still undermining it. The message was clear. She might have achieved something, but only because of advantages others did not have. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but Derek was already moving on, turning his attention to other classmates and leaving her standing in the middle of the room with everyone staring at her. This was a game she could not win because Derek was not fighting fair. He was using her own insecurities and the crowd's assumptions against her, making her success seem hollow regardless of what she said. As conversations resumed around her, Sarah realized that Derek had accomplished exactly what he set out to do. He had planted doubt about her credibility and character in the minds of everyone present. By tomorrow, the story would spread through their extended network. Sarah Walsh had gotten lucky, married well, and was trying to take credit for success she had not earned. She needed backup, and she needed it now. Sarah pulled out her phone and texted Jake, "Need you here. Now." Sarah retreated to the ladies' room, needing a moment to collect herself before facing the crowd again. The fluorescent lighting was harsh, showing every line of stress on her face in the mirror. She was reapplying lipstick when Madison Cooper walked in, flanked by two other former classmates. "Sarah, honey, are you okay? You looked a little rattled out there." The false concern in Madison's voice was more cutting than outright hostility would have been. Sarah had seen this dynamic before, the way certain women could weaponize sympathy to make their targets feel even more vulnerable. "I am fine, Madison. Thanks for asking. It is just, well, Derek was telling us some interesting stories about your marriage. Not anything mean, of course. He is always so classy about personal things, but he seemed genuinely worried about you." Sarah's hand tightened on her lipstick tube. "Worried about me? Well, you know how it is in tech. So much pressure, so much money involved. He mentioned that you had struggled in college, had some confidence issues. He is just concerned that you might be in over your head." The other women nodded sympathetically, their expressions perfectly crafted masks of concern. Sarah realized this was part of Derek's strategy. He was not just attacking her publicly, he was creating a network of allies who would spread his narrative with seemingly good intentions. "Derek always did have a vivid imagination," Sarah said carefully. "Oh, I am sure he exaggerated," Madison said with a laugh that suggested she believed no such thing. "But you have to admit, the tech industry is pretty cutthroat. All those brilliant engineers and programmers, it must be intimidating for someone without that background." Sarah felt the familiar doubt creeping in. Madison was right that the tech industry was intimidating. Sarah had spent years feeling like an imposter among people with computer science degrees from MIT and Stanford. Even now, with all her success, she sometimes wondered if she truly belonged. "Actually," said a new voice from the doorway, "Sarah has one of the most impressive technical backgrounds I have ever seen." Emma Rodriguez walked into the bathroom, her journalist instincts having obviously kicked in when she noticed Sarah's extended absence. "I am sorry, do we know each other?" Madison asked, her tone cool. "Emma Rodriguez, Boston Globe. I have been covering the tech industry for 7 years, and I can tell you that Sarah's work in artificial intelligence is groundbreaking. Her facial recognition algorithms are being licensed by the Department of Homeland Security. That does not happen to people who are in over their heads." Madison's smile became strained. "Well, I am sure Sarah is very talented. We are just old friends catching up." "Of course," Emma said pleasantly. Though I have to say, I am curious about Derek's expertise in evaluating tech companies. What was his background in artificial intelligence again? The question hung in the air. Madison clearly had no answer, and her companions were looking increasingly uncomfortable. I think we should head back to the party, one of them said quickly. After they left, Emma turned to Sarah. You look like you have seen a ghost. Derek is not just trying to embarrass me, Sarah said. He is systematically destroying my credibility. He has turned half our graduating class into his personal propaganda machine. Sarah, these people do not matter. Their opinions will not affect your business or your reputation in any meaningful way. But what if he is right? What if I am in over my head? What if I only succeeded because I had advantages other people did not have? Emma grabbed Sarah by the shoulders. Listen to me. I have interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurs. I have seen brilliant people fail and mediocre people succeed based on luck and timing. You are not mediocre and you are not lucky. You are genuinely exceptional at what you do. Sarah wanted to believe her, but Derek's words kept echoing in her mind. The tech industry was intimidating. She did not have a computer science degree. She had married someone with enormous resources and connections. Maybe her success was not as earned as she wanted to believe. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Stuck in traffic, ETA 20 minutes. How are you holding up? Sarah typed back, Fine. Take your time. She was not fine, but she did not want Jake rushing to rescue her. This was her battle to fight. Back in the main room, Derek was in the middle of another story. This one about a recent case involving corporate espionage in the tech industry. Sarah listened from across the room, a cold dread settling in her stomach as the details became clear. Derek was describing a case that sounded remarkably similar to Neuralink Solutions technology. He mentioned stolen algorithms, duplicated patents, and founders who had built companies on intellectual property that did not belong to them. Of course, I cannot name names, Derek said with a conspiratorial smile. Attorney-client privilege and all that. But let us just say that some people in the tech industry are not as original as they claim to be. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Derek was not just undermining her credibility. He was suggesting that her company's core technology was stolen. It was a lie, but it was a sophisticated lie that would be impossible to disprove without revealing proprietary information. The crowd was hanging on every word. Sarah could see them connecting the dots, remembering Derek's earlier comments about her marriage and her rapid rise in tech. The narrative was coming together. Sarah Mitchell was a fraud who had stolen her way to success and married for protection. She pulled out her phone and called Jake. Sarah, I thought you wanted me to take my time. Derek is not just trying to embarrass me, she said, keeping her voice low. He is setting me up for something bigger. I think he is going to accuse me of stealing Neuralink's core technology. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Sarah, that is not just defamation. If he is suggesting corporate espionage, that could trigger a regulatory investigation. Even if the accusations are baseless, it could destroy your upcoming partnerships. Sarah felt the room spinning. Derek was not just trying to humiliate her at a high school reunion. He was trying to destroy her company, her livelihood, everything she had built. And the worst part was, he was doing it with a smile, in front of people who remembered her as the quiet girl who had never quite measured up. Jake, I need you here now. I think I am in real trouble. Jake's BMW pulled into the Westfield Academy parking lot 37 minutes later, gravel crunching under the tires. Sarah met him at the entrance, her face pale and her hands shaking slightly. How bad is it? He asked, taking her hands in his. Worse than I thought. Derek is not just attacking my reputation. I think he is building a legal case against Neuralink. He kept talking about stolen intellectual property and corporate espionage, making it sound like he represents clients in tech cases like ours. Jake's expression darkened. What exactly did he say? He described algorithms that sound suspiciously like our facial recognition technology. He mentioned patents that could be our patents. He made it sound like someone had built a company on stolen IP. Sarah, that is not possible. Your technology is completely original. You developed those algorithms yourself over 3 years. I have seen your research notes, your proof of concepts, your early prototypes. But what if someone planted evidence? What if Derek has been planning this for months? He could have insider information about our technology. He could have fabricated documentation that makes it look like we stole someone else's work. Jake studied her face. Sarah, you are spiraling. Derek is a corporate lawyer, not a tech expert. He could not fabricate technical documentation that would fool actual engineers. Then why is he so confident? Why is he willing to make these accusations in front of witnesses? Before Jake could answer, Emma appeared in the doorway. Sarah, you need to get back in there. Derek just announced that he has a special surprise for everyone. He says he has some old photos and videos from college that will be fun to share. Sarah's stomach dropped. Photos and videos? He set up a laptop connected to the big screen. He is calling it a trip down memory lane. Sarah and Jake exchanged glances. This was not about nostalgia. Derek had something specific planned, something he thought would be devastating. They walked back into the gymnasium together. Derek was at the front of the room, adjusting a laptop connected to a large projection screen. The crowd had gathered around, excited about the promised entertainment. Ah, Sarah! Perfect timing, Derek called out. I was just about to share some memories from our college days. I found some old videos on my phone from when we were at Suffolk together. Sarah's heart stopped. She remembered Derek filming her sometimes when they were dating, usually when she was studying or working on projects. She had always found it annoying, but he had insisted it was sweet, that he wanted to remember their time together. This first one is from Sarah's senior year, Derek said, clicking play. She was working on her thesis project for her business degree. The screen filled with a video of 22-year-old Sarah sitting at their kitchen table, surrounded by papers and looking frustrated. Her younger self was talking to someone off camera, presumably Derek. I do not understand any of this, video Sarah was saying. These financial models do not make sense. Maybe I should just write about something easier, like marketing or human resources. Come on, babe, Derek's voice could be heard saying. You are smart enough to figure this out, though maybe business is not really your strong suit. You have always been better at the people side of things. Maybe you are right, video Sarah replied. Maybe I should focus on what I'm actually good at. Weishun. Present-day Sarah watched in horror as her younger self accepted Derek's subtle put-down, internalizing the message that she was not smart enough for analytical thinking. The crowd was watching with interest, probably thinking this was just a cute glimpse into their college relationship. But Sarah knew Derek well enough to recognize the setup. This was just the beginning. And here is another fun one, Derek said, clicking to the next video. Sarah was telling me about some job interviews she had lined up after graduation. This video showed Sarah getting ready for an interview, looking nervous as she practiced talking about her qualifications. I am not sure I am ready for this, video Sarah was saying. These companies are looking for people with real experience. I am just a business major from Suffolk. I do not have anything special to offer. You will figure it out, Derek's voice responded. Though you might want to think about what kind of companies would be a good fit for your skill level. Maybe something smaller, less demanding. The crowd chuckled at what they thought was supportive relationship banter. But Sarah could see the pattern Derek was creating. Each video showed her expressing self-doubt, accepting limitations, admitting she was not qualified for the challenges she faced. He was building a narrative that painted her as someone who had always been insecure about her abilities, someone who had never believed she was capable of real success. When combined with his earlier insinuations about her marriage and her company, the message was clear. Sarah Mitchell was a fraud who had stumbled into success despite her limitations. This last one is my favorite, Derek said with a smile that made Sarah's blood run cold. Sarah was telling me about this crazy idea she had for some kind of computer program. It was so adorable. Sarah's breath caught. She remembered this conversation. It had been the night she had told Derek about her idea for facial recognition software, the spark of inspiration that would eventually become neural link solutions. She had been so excited, so full of possibility. The video began, and Sarah watched her younger self describing her vision for artificial intelligence that could identify faces in crowds, technology that could make public spaces safer. Her past self was animated, passionate, brilliant. That sounds really complicated, Derek's voice said from behind the camera. Are you sure you understand how that would actually work? I mean, programming is not exactly your thing. I could learn, Video Sarah replied, but already her enthusiasm was dimming. Maybe I could take some classes. Maybe, Derek said, though it sounds like the kind of thing that would require years of studying. And honestly, babe, you have never been great with technical stuff. Remember how frustrated you got with your statistics class? Sarah watched her younger self deflate in real time. The spark of inspiration faded from her eyes as Derek's words worked their poison. By the end of the video, she was nodding along as he suggested she focus on more realistic goals. The crowd applauded as the videos ended, charmed by what they thought was a sweet glimpse into a college relationship. But Sarah felt like she had been gutted. Derek had not just documented their conversations. He had recorded himself systematically destroying her confidence. And now he was sharing that destruction with everyone they had ever known. Isn't it funny how ideas evolve? Derek said to the crowd. Sarah's little facial recognition concept sounds a lot like the technology her company makes now. Almost like someone took that innocent college idea and turned it into something real. Makes you wonder how that transformation happened, right? The implication was devastating. Derek was suggesting that the core idea for Neuralink solutions had originated during their relationship, which could make him a potential partner or co-inventor. Even worse, he was suggesting that Sarah had not been capable of developing the idea herself, which raised questions about who had actually done the work. Sarah felt the room spinning. Derek had not just attacked her reputation. He had potentially created a legal claim to her company's intellectual property. Those videos could be used as evidence that the foundational ideas for Neuralink had been developed during their relationship, when they were married and potentially sharing intellectual assets. Jake stepped forward, his face a mask of controlled fury. That is an interesting collection of videos, Derek. I am curious about when they were recorded and whether Sarah consented to you keeping them all these years. Derek's smile did not waver. Just some old memories, Jake. Nothing more than that. Anna. But Sarah knew better. Derek had just fired the opening shot in a war she had not seen coming, and from the satisfied look on his face, he was just getting started. Jake Harrison was not a man who lost his temper easily. In boardrooms across Silicon Valley, he was known for his calm, analytical approach to complex problems. But standing in a high school gymnasium, watching his wife be systematically destroyed by her ex-husband's psychological warfare, had pushed him to the edge of his legendary self-control. Sarah, he said quietly, we are leaving. Now. I cannot run away from this, Sarah replied, though her voice was shaking. If I leave now, Derek wins. Derek has already won this round. He has home field advantage and a crowd that remembers you as his wife, not as the CEO of a $50 million company. Fighting him here is like trying to win a knife fight in a phone booth. But even as Jake spoke, he was analyzing the situation with the strategic mind that had built his empire. Derek Walsh was good at playing social dynamics, but he had made a critical error. He had escalated beyond rumor and innuendo into potential legal territory. Those videos could be construed as evidence in an intellectual property dispute, which meant this was no longer just personal, it was business. And Jake Harrison was very, very good at business. Derek was still holding court at the front of the room, accepting congratulations on his entertaining presentation. The crowd was beginning to disperse, but Jake noticed several people taking photos of Derek with their phones. Tomorrow, those photos would be posted on social media with captions about how great it was to reconnect with old friends. Derek's narrative would spread far beyond this room. Emma, Jake said, I need you to do something for me. Start documenting everything. Take photos of Derek, record conversations if possible. If this becomes a legal matter, we are going to need evidence of what happened here tonight. Emma nodded, already pulling out her phone. As an investigative journalist, she understood the importance of contemporaneous documentation. Jake turned back to Sarah. I need you to trust me on this. We are not running away. We are changing the battlefield. Before Sarah could ask what he meant, Jake's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it and smiled grimly. Perfect timing, he said. Sarah, remember that board meeting I was at earlier? The one for Titan Security Solutions? Sarah nodded. Titan was one of Jake's portfolio companies, a cybersecurity firm that worked with Fortune 500 companies. Well, it turns out they have been investigating a series of corporate espionage cases involving stolen artificial intelligence algorithms. cases that have been prosecuted by a law firm called Walsh, Morrison and Associates. Sarah's eyes widened. Derek's firm? Derek's firm. And according to Titan's CEO, there have been some irregularities in how those cases were handled. Specifically, there are questions about whether Walsh, Morrison and Associates might have been working both sides of certain disputes. Jake showed Sarah his phone. The text message was from Marcus Webb, Titan's CEO. Jake, you need to see this. We have evidence that Derek Walsh has been selling client information to competitors. This guy is about to be indicted. Sarah stared at the message. Derek is under investigation? More than that, Marcus says the FBI is planning arrests within the next few days. Derek Walsh is about to go down for corporate espionage, conspiracy, and fraud. Across the room, Derek was still charming their former classmates, completely unaware that his world was about to implode. Jake felt a cold satisfaction as he watched the man who had spent the evening systematically destroying his wife's reputation. So what do we do? Sarah asked. We let Derek dig his own grave a little deeper, Jake said. Then we bury him in it. Jake walked toward the front of the room, his presence immediately commanding attention. Conversations quieted as people recognized him, their phones quickly emerging as they realized they were in the presence of actual celebrity. Derek, Jake said, his voice carrying easily across the room. I have to say, those videos were fascinating, particularly the technical discussions. As someone who works in artificial intelligence myself, I am always interested in the origin stories of breakthrough technologies. Derek's smile became slightly strained. Just some old memories, Jake. Nothing too technical. Oh, but that is where you are wrong, Jake said pleasantly. You see, intellectual property law in the tech industry is incredibly complex. When someone develops foundational ideas for new technology, there are very specific legal frameworks that determine ownership and attribution. The crowd was listening intently now, sensing drama but not understanding the stakes. For example, Jake continued, if someone were to claim partial ownership of a technology based on early conceptual discussions, they would need to demonstrate actual contribution to the development process. Not just inspiration or encouragement, but genuine technical input. Derek's face was beginning to lose color. I am not sure what you are getting at. What I am getting at is that Sarah's facial recognition algorithms are based on advanced machine learning principles that require doctoral-level understanding of artificial intelligence, the kind of understanding that comes from years of specialized study and hands-on development work. Jake paused, letting his words sink in. The kind of understanding that Sarah demonstrated when she filed her first patent application 3 years ago, 2 years after your divorce, using research methodologies that she developed independently, with code that she wrote herself, based on mathematical models that she derived from first principles. The room was dead silent now. Jake was systematically dismantling Derek's implied claims with the precision of a surgeon. So while those college videos are certainly charming, Jake said, they do not constitute evidence of intellectual property contribution. What they do constitute is documentation of psychological manipulation designed to undermine someone's confidence in their own abilities. Derek opened his mouth to respond, but Jake was not finished. Which brings me to another interesting point. Sarah, when exactly did you first contact the patent office about your facial recognition technology? Sarah, understanding where this was going, pulled out her phone and checked her files. March 15th, 2021, she said clearly. And when did you first demonstrate a working prototype to potential investors? June 20th, 2021. Interesting, Jake said, because according to public records, Derek Walsh first contacted MIT's Technology Transfer Office asking about student research in artificial intelligence on March 20th, 2021, 5 days after Sarah filed her initial patent application. The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Derek had not been building a case based on their marriage. He had been conducting industrial espionage, trying to find ways to claim ownership of technology that Sarah had developed independently. That is ridiculous, Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. I was researching background for a client case. What client? Jake asked simply. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. He could not name a client because there was no client. He had been investigating Sarah's technology for his own purposes. Jake smiled the cold smile of a predator who had cornered his prey. You know, Derek, for someone who works in corporate law, you really should be more careful about creating evidence trails, especially when the FBI is already investigating your firm for corporate espionage. The blood drained from Derek's face completely. The crowd gasped. Emma was recording everything on her phone. That is not, Derek started, then stopped. He looked around the room at the faces of his former classmates, all of whom were staring at him with mixtures of shock and disgust. The golden boy of Westfield Academy, the charming lawyer who had spent the evening destroying his ex-wife's reputation, had just been revealed as a criminal under federal investigation. Jake turned to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it is time for my wife and me to go home. We have a company to run and patents to protect. He took Sarah's hand and began walking toward the exit. The crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. As they reached the door, Jake turned back one last time. Oh, and Derek, you might want to call a lawyer. A good one. You are going to need it. The drive back to Boston was silent for the first 20 minutes. Sarah stared out the passenger window at the Massachusetts countryside, trying to process what had just happened. Jake's revelation about Derek's FBI investigation had turned the entire evening upside down, transforming her from victim to vindicated survivor in the span of 5 minutes. How long have you known? She finally asked. About Derek specifically? I found out this afternoon when Marcus Webb called me, but I have been tracking the Walsh-Morrison investigation for months through Titan Security. They are one of the firms that got burned by Derek's scheme. Sarah turned to look at him. You have been investigating my ex-husband? Not intentionally. Derek's firm represented several companies that turned out to be stealing intellectual property from Titan's clients. When Marcus started digging into the pattern, Derek's name kept coming up. It was not until this afternoon that I realized it was the same Derek Walsh who used to be married to you. Jake pulled into a rest stop and turned off the engine. In the sudden quiet, Sarah could hear her own heartbeat. Sarah, there is something else you need to know. The FBI raid on Derek's firm is happening tomorrow morning. He is going to be arrested on multiple felony charges, including conspiracy, fraud, and corporate espionage. The videos he showed tonight are probably the last public appearance he will make as a free man. Sarah felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that Derek's attacks on her credibility would backfire spectacularly. Vindication that her instincts about his motives had been correct. But also a kind of sadness for the person she had once loved, before she understood what he really was. How bad is it going to be for him? Bad. The FBI has been building this case for 18 months. They have wiretaps, financial records, testimony from his co-conspirators. Derek was not just selling client information. He was actively helping competitors steal technology, then representing the original companies in the resulting lawsuits. It is a double-billing scheme that defrauded his clients out of millions of dollars. Sarah shook her head. That is why he was so confident tonight. He thought he could destroy my reputation before his own legal troubles became public. If I look like a fraud, it would be easier for him to claim ownership of Neuralink's technology as part of his defense strategy. Exactly. He was trying to establish a narrative that you were not capable of developing the technology yourself, which would support his claim that the ideas originated during your marriage. It was actually quite sophisticated in a sociopathic way. Jake's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it and frowned. What is it? Sarah asked. Emma. She says Derek left the reunion about 10 minutes after we did, but before he left, he was seen talking to several people and taking their contact information. She thinks he might be trying to recruit them as witnesses for his legal defense. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. He is still trying to control the narrative, even now. It will not work. By tomorrow afternoon, everyone at that reunion will know exactly what Derek Walsh really is. The story will be all over social media, and trust me, it will not be flattering. They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence. Sarah felt like she was emerging from a fog that had been clouding her judgment for weeks. Derek's attacks on her credibility had worked because they had activated her deepest insecurities about her own worthiness. But those insecurities were not facts. They were weapons he had given her to use against herself. Back in their Beacon Hill penthouse, Sarah poured herself a glass of wine and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. The city sparkled below her, full of possibility and promise. Her city, her life, her success. Jake joined her at the window. How are you feeling? Like I have been holding my breath for 5 years and can finally exhale, Sarah said. Derek had me convinced that I was living a lie, that my success was not real. But it is real, is not it? I did build Neuralink. I did develop those algorithms. I did earn every patent and every dollar. You did all of that and more. You built something remarkable, Sarah. Something that will make the world safer and better. Derek never could have done what you did because he does not have your vision or your technical brilliance. Sarah's phone buzzed with notifications. Word about Derek's impending arrest was already starting to leak. Her corporate communications team was texting about media calls. Her board members were reaching out for updates. The business world was about to learn that Derek Walsh was not the successful lawyer he appeared to be, but a criminal who had been stealing from his own clients. There is going to be a media circus, Sarah said. Yes, but this time the story will be about how Derek Walsh tried to destroy his ex-wife's reputation to cover up his own crimes. You are going to come out of this looking like the victim of a sophisticated manipulation campaign, not the perpetrator of fraud. Sarah nodded, already thinking about how to handle the inevitable interview requests. But for the first time in weeks, she was not afraid of the attention. She had nothing to hide and everything to be proud of. Her phone rang. Victoria Chen from Apex Ventures. Sarah, I just heard some disturbing rumors about Derek Walsh. Is it true that he is under FBI investigation? I cannot comment on ongoing law enforcement matters, Sarah said carefully, but I can tell you that any questions about my company's intellectual property are completely baseless. Our technology is 100% original and properly documented. Good, because we have had several investors calling tonight asking about the rumors Derek was spreading. I told them all to go look at your patent applications and technical documentation. The proof is in the science, not in office gossip. After hanging up, Sarah realized that Derek's attack on her credibility had actually backfired in an unexpected way. By forcing her to defend her work publicly, he had inadvertently created an opportunity for her to showcase her technical expertise. The investors who had questioned her qualifications were now getting a detailed look at her innovations, and they were impressed. You know what the ironic thing is? Sarah said to Jake. Derek thought he was destroying my reputation, but he actually enhanced it. Everyone who matters in tech now knows exactly how sophisticated my work is. Jake smiled. Karma has a beautiful sense of timing. At 11:30 that night, Sarah received a text from an unknown number. I know you think you won tonight, but this is not over. I will find a way to prove that your success is built on lies. Sarah showed the message to Jake, who immediately forwarded it to Marcus Webb at Titan Security. Evidence of witness intimidation, Jake said. Derek just added another felony charge to his collection. Sarah deleted the message without responding. Derek Walsh no longer had the power to make her doubt herself. Tomorrow the world would know who he really was, and Sarah would continue building the future, one patent at a time. The FBI raid on Walsh, Morrison, and Associates began at 6:37 a.m. on a crisp October morning. Sarah watched the news coverage from her office, or still arriving early, despite having been up late the night before. Federal agents and windbreakers carrying boxes of evidence filled the screen as reporters described the dramatic culmination of an 18-month investigation into corporate espionage and fraud. Derek Walsh was arrested at his Beacon Hill townhouse at 7:15 a.m., led away in handcuffs while news cameras captured every moment. The man who had tried to destroy Sarah's reputation less than 12 hours earlier was now facing 23 federal charges and up to 30 years in prison. Emma Rodriguez knocked on Sarah's office door, carrying coffee and a satisfied expression. Seen the news? Emma asked, settling into a chair across from Sarah's desk. Hard to miss it. My phone has been ringing all morning with reporters wanting comments. What are you telling them? No comment on ongoing legal proceedings, but full confidence in our intellectual property protections and gratitude for law enforcement's diligent work, Sarah said. Corporate Communications wrote the statement. Emma grinned. Very diplomatic. Though I have to say, the Globe is running a particularly unflattering photo of Derek being arrested. He looks exactly like what he is, a white-collar criminal who thought he was too smart to get caught. Sarah's assistant knocked on the door. Sarah, Victoria Chen from Apex Ventures is here for your 10 o'clock. Sarah had forgotten about the meeting, scheduled weeks earlier to discuss expansion plans for Neuralink's technology. Given the events of the last 24 hours, she expected Victoria might want to postpone or reconsider their partnership. Victoria walked in carrying a folder and wearing an expression that Sarah could not read. Sarah, I hope you do not mind me starting with the obvious question. Are you okay? Last night must have been traumatic. I am fine, Victoria. Actually, I am better than fine. Derek's attack on me clarified a lot of things that I had been uncertain about. Victoria nodded. Good, because I have been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I wanted to discuss accelerating our timeline for the Series C funding round. Sarah blinked. Accelerating it? After Derek's arrest this morning, I started getting calls from other investors who had heard his insinuations about your background. But instead of being concerned, they wanted to know more about your technology. When people actually looked at your patents and technical documentation, they realized how groundbreaking your work really is. Victoria opened her folder and pulled out a term sheet. We are prepared to lead a $150 million Series C round with a pre-money valuation of $800 million. That would make Neuralink Solutions one of the most valuable AI companies in New England. Sarah stared at the document. In trying to destroy her company, Derek had accidentally highlighted its true value to the investment community. There is one condition, Victoria continued. We want you to speak at the TechCrunch Disrupt conference next month about overcoming adversity in the startup world. Your story has resonated with a lot of people, especially women in tech who have faced similar challenges. After Victoria left, Sarah sat alone in her office processing the magnitude of what had happened. 24 hours ago, she had been terrified that Derek's psychological warfare would destroy everything she had built. Now she was sitting on a term sheet that would make her company worth nearly $1 billion. Her phone rang. Jake. Have you seen the investor interest today? He asked. Victoria just offered us a $150 million Series C. I think Derek's attack backfired in ways he never could have imagined. That is not even the best part, Jake said. Marcus Webb called me this morning. 3 of Derek's former clients want to hire Neuralink Solutions to audit their security systems and make sure their intellectual property was not compromised. Derek's downfall is literally creating business opportunities for you. Sarah laughed. So let me get this straight. Derek tried to destroy my reputation, got himself arrested, and accidentally turned me into the most talked about CEO in Boston Tech? That is exactly what happened. Though I have to say, none of this would have mattered if your technology was not genuinely revolutionary. Derek could not have destroyed something real just by spreading lies about it. That afternoon, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Coach Patricia Williams, her former computer science teacher from Westfield Academy, knocked on her office door. I hope you do not mind the surprise visit, Coach Williams said. I was at the reunion last night, and I wanted to apologize. Sarah gestured for her to sit down. Apologize for what? For not speaking up when Derek was attacking you. I knew that boy was trouble in high school, and I should have said something when he started his performance last night. Sorry. Coach Williams was in her 60s now, with gray hair and laugh lines, but her eyes still held the sharp intelligence that had inspired Sarah to love learning. I remember when you were in my AP computer science class, she continued. You were one of the most naturally gifted programmers I ever taught. You understood algorithms at an intuitive level that most students never reach. When I heard you had dropped out of MIT, I was heartbroken. Derek convinced me I was not smart enough for computer science, Sarah admitted. Derek Walsh could not have passed my computer science class if his life depended on it, Coach Williams said firmly. That boy was all charm and no substance. But you, Sarah, you had something special. You still do. She handed Sarah a manila envelope. I brought you something. Remember the final project you did for my class? The facial recognition program that could identify students in yearbook photos? Sarah opened the envelope and found a printed copy of code she had written 17 years earlier. Looking at it now, she could see the seeds of the algorithms that would eventually become Neuralink's core technology. You were already thinking about artificial intelligence in high school, Coach Williams said. Derek Walsh had nothing to do with your success. You have been brilliant your entire life. You just forgot for a while. After Coach Williams left, Sarah sat in her office holding the printout of her high school code. Derek had tried to convince the world that she was not capable of developing sophisticated technology, But the evidence of her abilities went back decades. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Check your email. I think you are going to want to see this." Sarah opened her laptop and found an email from the MIT Technology Review. "We would like to feature you on the cover of our Women in Tech issue. Your story of overcoming adversity to build breakthrough AI technology is exactly the kind of inspiration our readers need." Sarah looked out her office window at the Boston skyline. Somewhere out there, Derek Walsh was sitting in a federal holding cell, his career destroyed and his reputation in ruins. He had tried to make her feel small and insignificant, but instead he had inadvertently showcased her strength and resilience to the entire tech industry. She picked up her phone and called Jake. "I think," she said when he answered, "it is time to plan a celebration." 6 months later, Sarah Mitchell stood at the podium of the MIT auditorium, looking out at an audience of 250 young women studying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The same institution where she had once felt like a failure was now hosting her as the keynote speaker for their annual Women in STEM Symposium. "The first thing I want to tell you," Sarah began, "is that imposter syndrome is not a character flaw. It is a symptom of a culture that systematically undermines women's confidence in their own abilities." The audience was engaged, leaning forward in their seats. Sarah recognized the expression on many of their faces: the hunger for validation, the need to hear that their struggles were not unique to them. "5 years ago, I was convinced that I was not smart enough to succeed in technology. I had been told so many times that I was reaching too high, that I should focus on more realistic goals, that I started to believe it myself." She clicked to a slide showing Neuralink Solutions' growth trajectory over the past year. Since Derek's arrest and the media attention that followed, the company had tripled in size and expanded into 3 new markets. Today, Neuralink Solutions employs 218 people. Our facial recognition technology is deployed in airports across the country, making travel safer for millions of Americans. We hold 34 patents in artificial intelligence and machine learning. She paused, looking directly at a young woman in the front row who reminded her of herself at that age. "I am not telling you this to brag. I am telling you this because 6 months ago, someone tried to convince the world that none of it was real, that I was a fraud who had stolen credit for other people's work. And for a moment, I almost believed him." The room was completely silent now. Sarah's story had been covered extensively in the tech press, but this was the first time she had spoken publicly about the personal impact of Derek's psychological warfare. "The man who tried to destroy my reputation is now serving a 12-year federal prison sentence for corporate espionage and fraud. But the damage he tried to do was not really about my company or my patents. It was about making me doubt my own worth." She clicked to a slide showing her high school computer science project, the facial recognition program that Coach Williams had saved. "This is code I wrote when I was 17 years old. It is the foundation of everything I have built since then. No one can take credit for your ideas except you. No one can steal your intelligence, your creativity, or your determination." After the speech, Sarah was surrounded by students asking questions about entrepreneurship, artificial intelligence, and overcoming obstacles. A sophomore from Pakistan wanted to know how to handle professors who dismissed her ideas. A senior from rural Montana was worried about competing with students from more prestigious backgrounds. Sarah answered each question thoughtfully, remembering her own fears and insecurities at their age. The difference was that these young women had role models and support systems that she had not had. They would face challenges, but they would not face them alone. Emma Rodriguez was waiting in the wings with a camera crew from the Boston Globe. The newspaper was filming a documentary about women entrepreneurs in Boston, and Sarah's story was the centerpiece. "How does it feel to be back at MIT?" Emma asked as they walked across campus. "Like coming home," Sarah said, "but also like discovering that home was always inside me, not in any particular place." Jake met them for lunch at a restaurant near campus. The 3 of them had become an unlikely team over the past year: the entrepreneur, the investigative journalist, and the tech mogul who had learned to use his resources to protect the people he loved. "Any word on Derek's appeal?" Jake asked. "His lawyers filed the paperwork last month," Emma said, "but given the evidence against him, legal experts do not think he has much of a chance. He will probably serve at least 10 years. Sarah felt a pang of something that was not quite sadness, but was not satisfaction either. Derek Walsh had destroyed his own life through greed and arrogance, but she took no pleasure in his downfall. She just felt grateful that he could no longer hurt anyone else. "I got some interesting news this morning," Jake said. "Marcus Webb at Titan Security wants to know if Neuralink would be interested in a partnership to develop fraud detection algorithms for financial institutions." "That is Derek's specialty," Sarah said with dark humor. "I suppose there is poetic justice in using our technology to catch the kind of crimes he committed." That evening, Sarah and Jake attended a gala for the Boston Children's Hospital, where Neuralink Solutions was donating facial recognition technology to help identify missing children. Sarah wore the same sapphire blue dress she had worn to the reunion, but now it felt like armor instead of costume. As they walked through the crowd of Boston's elite, Sarah reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, she had been terrified that people would question her credibility. Now she was recognized as one of the most innovative entrepreneurs in the city. Her technology was saving lives, her company was thriving, and her personal story had inspired thousands of women to pursue careers in STEM. The gala's organizer introduced Sarah to a group of potential partners, describing her as a visionary who had revolutionized artificial intelligence while overcoming extraordinary personal adversity. The introduction felt surreal, but no longer uncomfortable. Sarah had learned to own her success without apology. Near the end of the evening, Sarah's phone buzzed with a news alert. Derek Walsh's former law firm had filed for bankruptcy, unable to survive the lawsuits and criminal investigations that followed his arrest. 37 employees had lost their jobs and dozens of clients were pursuing legal action for malpractice. Sarah showed the alert to Jake, who shook his head. "He did not just destroy his own life," Jake said. "He destroyed the lives of everyone who trusted him." "That is the real tragedy," Sarah agreed. "Derek was so obsessed with tearing me down that he lost sight of everything else that mattered." As they drove home through the Boston streets, Sarah thought about the young women she had spoken to that afternoon. They would face their own Derek Walshes, people who would try to convince them they were not smart enough, not qualified enough, not worthy enough to pursue their dreams. But unlike Sarah's generation, these women had examples of success to follow. They had proof that intelligence and determination could overcome psychological manipulation and institutional bias. They had role models who had built billion-dollar companies and revolutionary technologies. "Do you ever regret going to that reunion?" Jake asked as they pulled into their garage. Sarah considered the question. "No. If Derek had not forced that confrontation, I might have spent years carrying his poison around inside me. His attack on me was the best thing that could have happened, because it forced me to defend everything I had built. In doing that, I finally understood that it was all real." Later that night, Sarah sat in her home office reviewing patent applications for Neuralink's next breakthrough: artificial intelligence that could detect early signs of cancer in medical imaging. It was technology that could save millions of lives, work that would cement her reputation as one of the most important innovators of her generation. She opened her laptop and began typing code, the same activity that had brought her joy since she was 17 years old. Outside her window, Boston glittered with possibility. Inside her office, the future was taking shape one algorithm at a time. Derek Walsh had tried to convince the world that Sarah Mitchell was a fraud. Instead, he had accidentally proved that she was exactly what she claimed to be: a brilliant entrepreneur who had built something extraordinary through intelligence, determination, and an unshakable belief in the power of technology to make the world better. The girl who had once doubted her own worth was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of achieving. And that transformation, Sarah realized, was worth more than any amount of money or recognition. It was freedom. What did you think of Sarah's incredible transformation? Have you ever faced someone who tried to make you feel small, only to prove them spectacularly wrong? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing your stories of overcoming toxic people and finding your true strength. If this story of justice and redemption resonated with you, hit that like button to help others discover it. Share it with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by people who try to tear them down. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive into corporate intrigue and personal triumph, you'll definitely want to subscribe and ring that notification bell. we've got more incredible stories of people who turned their darkest moments into their greatest victories. Because here's the truth. Sometimes the person who tries to destroy you ends up being the catalyst for your greatest success. Derek Walsh thought he was Sarah's nightmare. Turns out he was actually her greatest gift. What story should we explore next? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.